I started volunteering about a year after I retired. I
Mm.
retired right at the beginning of the pandemic, and so the library was closed. So my plans were thwarted to begin immediately in fall. And so, as a retired teacher and a lifelong reader, the library just seemed like a really good fit for me to choose the Sun Prairie Library to do my volunteer work, do some of my volunteer work.
Awesome. And what did you teach before you retired?
I taught high school French in Madison for 28 years.
So thank you for that. Yeah. What inspired you to join the library as a volunteer?
So again, just having been a teacher, knowing how
Mm.
important reading is, especially for children, and how developing reading and the love of reading for children often turns into a lifelong love of
Yeah.
reading, really is beneficial, I think, for society as a whole. I think it helps people to broaden their horizons, and I think that the library serves that purpose, along with so many other things that libraries have become and
Mm.
continue to evolve to become as a community resource for people of all different needs.
Yeah, definitely. I know literacy is very important for me and my family. What I found that works best for my kids is just reading in front of them. One thing, my daughter, she's a bookworm. She loves to read. And one thing I found to get her to read isn't to tell her to read, but just let her see you reading. Do you have any other tips or advice for getting kids to read?
I think reading to children
Mm.
when they're little and and letting them pick what they want to read.
Yeah,
Anybody who poo-poos reading certain types of books, people who say, "Oh, graphic novels aren't real reading, and you should read real books." I think that's hogwash. I
of
think
course.
getting anybody to read anything in any format
Yep.
is valuable for, again, like I said before, broadening your horizons, being able to appreciate different perspectives,
Yeah.
and just thinking about the world as a bigger place than just what you're surrounded by in your daily life.
Yeah, definitely. That reminds me of my son who loves reading comic books. Like you, whatever it is, as long as you're reading, like that
Yeah,
totally support all of that. So I can
yeah.
definitely relate to that. So can you tell us a little bit about behind the scenes, like maybe anything that surprised you about the library since you've been volunteering?
I guess I don't have anything that I thought was a big surprise. About a year after I started
Mm.
volunteering, my husband retired from his job, and he
Uh,
actually got a part-time job at a different community library. And so I've been able to compare. And I think
nice.
one of the things that I have found to be perhaps a little bit eye-opening is how independently libraries run themselves and how
Mm.
they each look at the needs and the wants of their own communities, and then they are able to work on strategies on how do we meet those needs and how do we figure out how we're going to make that happen so that the people who live in their communities feel welcome in the library and feel that they have access to the things that they need,
Yeah.
by coming to the library, whether it's the computers for
Hmm.
people who are using them to do job searches,
Yep.
or if it's the maker spaces where people have the ability to
Mm.
learn new skills or practice skills with tools that they don't have to invest in, and things like that.
Yeah, and that just reminded me, like things that I take for granted, that a lot of us take for granted nowadays. I do remember when I was a new graduate, I had no money. I was searching for work, and I remember going to the library to fill out a resume and to apply to jobs because I didn't have a computer
Exactly,
yet. So,
exactly.
yeah, and I know it's so important for people to have that
People who
access.
people who want to read and don't have a budget to
Hmm.
buy books,
Yeah.
the library provides that. People who want to see movies but don't have a budget to go to the theater to
Yeah.
see movies, they can rent or borrow DVDs, and it allows people to have access to the arts and
Hmm.
literature and things like that that are really valuable.
Yeah, for sure. And then, um, do you have any stories or any specific interactions with patrons, or any project that you've worked on that you felt was particularly rewarding since you've been a volunteer?
I think last spring when I got involved in doing the project with in conjunction with the Henry Violet Zoo to make they create stuffed animals out of the T-shirts from
Oh,
their events, and
yeah,
we made capybaras that they then auction off to people who want to support the Henry Violet Zoo. And when I first signed up to do it, I was told by the library staff member, that I was the only person who had signed up at that point. But when I got here that first night, there were 12 people in the room, and
nice,
so it was really great. And people are coming
awesome.
in with their sewing machines, and people are coming in with groups of people who are working together, and you can hear them collaboratively working about, well, how do we want to make our pattern, and how do we want to set that on the t-shirt to take advantage of any lettering on the shirt, and you just kind of hear the buzz in the room of people who are having this opportunity to create in a group and to work together. And that was a really fun activity to be part of.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. And oh, you also mentioned that this is one of the places you volunteer. Do you mind me asking where else do you volunteer?
I do a fair amount of volunteering for PBS Wisconsin.
Oh,
So, and I've been doing that for over 30 years. So that's been where that's where I focused most of my volunteer work while I was still working, teaching full time.
nice. And then anything that's kind of changed your perspective or grown your perspective on the Sun Prairie community since you've been volunteering here?
I think it's my work here, my involvement here really just has reinforced how diverse of a community we live in.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people think of Sun Prairie as this suburb of Madison. It's really, we're just on the other side of the line of Madison. I still see a lot of the same types of things going on here in Sun Prairie as I saw when I was working in the public school system in Madison. And um, I think that the library system serves all of those people, and I get to see that cross section of people
Nice.
when I'm here at the library every week.
Nice. I'm sure you saw a very big part of the community when you were a teacher too.
Indeed.
And then if you were talking to a neighbor, someone else in the community that was considering volunteering, what would you tell them is the best part about the job?
I think that the fact that there's lots of different jobs that you
Mhm.
can do as a volunteer, it's if you look around and ask questions, you can find something that fits with
Yeah.
your skill set and things that you're interested in doing. And you just have to kind of ask the questions in order to
Yeah.
find out, what kinds of things they're looking to have done, and find what works best for you.
Yeah, I remember my picture of a volunteer was when I was in middle school, I was a library aide and I was always putting the books back. That was the biggest part of
Hmm.
mine. But what other types of volunteer opportunities are there?
Well, I'm a shelf reader, so
Yeah.
that's what I do is I come in and I take a couple sections every time that I'm here, and I make sure that the books are in the right place on the shelf. And sometimes it's just a matter of moving it from here to there,
Yeah.
shelf up or shelf down, or from the beginning of a shelf to the end of a shelf, because people moved a book out, looked at it, decided they didn't want it, and they didn't remember where it came from, so they just put it back close enough,
Yeah.
right? So my job is, to kind of put it where it kind of belongs. It makes it easier for people who are pulling books. For people who want to put something on hold, it's easier for them to find it. And I often get thanked by library staff
Yep.
for what I do, because it makes their job easier. But there's other jobs like in the Read Before bookstore where we'll be they'll be reopening that in spring, and I think a lot of people are kind of looking forward to that. And so you just have to ask those kinds of questions, find out what kinds of things people can do. You can volunteer with the friends of Sun Prairie Library. They do different activities and fundraising and all that kind of stuff. And it's really just a question of, as I always used to tell my students, you find the right kind of volunteer activity and you won't feel like you're working, right?
Yeah.
You'll feel like you're getting as much out of it as you're giving back in terms of the community and the people that you're working with.
Very